Welcome to another episode of Season of Tears, the podcast that uncovers stories, one of the darkest chapters of Sri Lankan history. Join us on this creeping journey through time. We'll be shining a light on forgotten tales of resilience and hope from those who lived through the riots of July 1983. Let's listen to the next story in the Season of Tears.
Today on Season of Tears, we hear from law lecturer and filmmaker Visakesa Chandrasekaram. Welcome to the podcast, Visa. Thank you for agreeing to be here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Right, lovely. So can we go back to that fateful day in July 1983?
Yes, look, I think I was in grade 8 in the school, and those days I was in Royal College, Colombo. And I was in a boarding place. I was a lodger in a place in Reid Avenue. It must be it must be a Monday or Tuesday. Anyway, it is either long weekend or I can't remember. It is just a weekend after the first day in the school. So, in the weekends we used to go home. My parents were living in Horana, Haltota those days. It is a small village in Kaluthara district. So we had the habit of going home during the weekend, but in that particular weekend, for some reason, I didn't end up going to see my parents, and I was in the boarding house. And I didn't have to come to the school from my parents' house, so I just basically went to the school from the boarding house. And there were some kind of information about something is not right, and there were some riots and things like that. But I was I think I was 13, and I really didn't have 13 or 14. Look, it must be 13 or 14. I can't exactly remember. And I didn't have much of a clue about riots or things like that. So there were less buses that day and more crowds. And so I went to the school, and then on my way, I started seeing burnt down vehicles. So my bus, for I think it must be 106 or something like that. So
that was your bus route.
Yes, there were a number of buses I could go to get to the school, but that bus actually went through High Level Road. So it has a kind of it takes a turn from Gold Road, and in the High Level Road junction, in the Pamankada junction near the Bow Tree, I saw a couple of cars being burned down, and still I saw the the smoke just emitted by the vehicles, and there must be one van or something also was burned down.
Was there a mob there at that point?
No, it's all finished by then. And that is my first exposure to this is all right. So something is not right. That must be around 7 o'clock in the morning. So obviously this thing happened in the very early morning or night before. And incidentally, now I live very close to that. I never thought of that. Actually, it is just walking distance, about 50 meters from where I live now. My house is, yes. So also there was some. So anyway, the bus kind of went past, and people were kind of, they were just kind of observing what is going on with their, with their this kind of amazement and sometimes surprise, and sometimes I can't remember exactly what they were whispering, and I think it was mixed still. I mean, I can't remember exactly what they were saying. And then once I arrived in the school, no teacher came to the class. Perhaps they came and they just left. They were also confused, and I think they sent messages to the parents to come and pick the children. And we still hang out and not knowing what to do. And I can remember a noise coming from somewhere in the school. It was a huge school. We had 13
Right.
grades for each class.
And had lots of
So
children
we,
come to school on that day.
yes, because I think nobody really knew what is going on. So there was no news about, there is no warning or anything. So a lot of children did come.
Right.
And so anyway, actually one of the first classes we had was PT.
Uh-huh.
PT basically, just kind of some exercises in the ground, some physical activities.
Yeah.
So I went to the PT class, and it was done by a old gentleman who is a former military officer who was, I can remember he always wore white color,
Uh-huh.
and he always was talking about discipline of the students and things like that. In front of him we had to be always standing very straight, and just there is a particular way that he expects us to behave. So we were just kind of lined up in the juniors playground, and he started giving a lecture. There was no activities. He was saying, what is going in the north, that I don't know whether he was using the word tigers, or they were probably using the word demalu, Tamils,
Yes.
and saying, they have acquired really sophisticated guns. Our boys don't have good guns. Our rifles are very old fashioned. And, when they shoot, their bullet goes straight. When we shoot, our bullet goes in a spiral way, so we can't really aim. I
So he
can
was saying
vividly
all this to
remember
the
those
children.
children. Yes, we were just
Oh.
13, 14 years old kids, and we were just kind of all listening to him. And the kids were looking at me because I was the only one with a Tamil name in the Sinhalese class, because I was studying in Sinhalese medium.
Right.
And I just kind of felt so. I mean, I don't know whether I was old enough to be embarrassed. Even I was so uncomfortable. And
Naturally.
anyway, so yes, without those activities, we ended up then going back to the class. And I can remember then there was a noise coming up, and that was a result of two different groups of fighting. And I think the Sinhalese students were attacking Tamils, and the Tamils were fighting back.
Oh my.
Of course, the Sinhalese students are vastly outnumbered the Tamils.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so then after that, we were asked to go, just leave the school. So it must be around 12 o'clock or 11:30. I can't exactly remember.
Right.
So I was waiting for buses, and there were no buses, because there were buses, but they all are so crowded. There were less buses. Then I thought, okay, I should then walk to Bumblebee Junction and try to catch a bus from there.
Right.
Um, then I walked along the Reid Avenue. You probably know that is
Yes.
the road between between two parts of Columbia University, and also
That's
one
right.
of the boundaries of Royal
Goes
College.
up to Tumulla, isn't it?
That's right. Yes. So I started walking there. I mean, the thing is, didn't have a clue how dangerous it is for a person with a Tamil name to walk in Colombo that particular time. But
And
again,
you
I
were
was
just a
so naive.
child. I mean, I can't even
Yes,
imagine,
yes,
you know.
yes. I didn't have a clue actually. Then, when I was passing to Mulla Junction, I saw a gang of people coming and looting Sanchi Vihar. Now it is Sri Vihar, and they had this tent. They had a kind of tent roof in the front, and they basically, I can see a man just jump to the roof, and then pour petrol over the tent, and then started he set fire. That was owned by obviously Tamils. And then I walked past Bullis Road, uh, where current HSBC was, and there was a egg shop called Colombo Egg Company, and remarkably still it survives there.
No.
It's a tiny little shop, and they used to sell eggs, and I think still they do.
Uh-huh.
And I saw some people were throwing the cases of eggs to the road. And then I walked to Bumblebee Junction.
Mm-hmm. And then? Right.
So
So,
I walked to the Bumblebee Junction, and there were some newspaper dealers and things like that. And There was an Illusto sign. I don't know whether probably people of my age would remember. It was a kind of some sort of a billboard set up by the
Right.
Illusto company. Yeah, and I can remember there near that place there was an woman. I knew she was Tamil because the way that she spoke Sinhalese, and she's very scrawny, and she
Uh-huh.
had a very dark skin because she was. I think it was because she worked very hard outdoor,
Outdoors. Yeah.
and yeah, she had a toddler in her hand, and then she was carrying a huge bundle of clothes. I mean, poor people those days
Of
didn't
course.
have bags, so they were carrying bundles, and she was asked, so she obviously left home not knowing what is going on. She was probably from from the up country, I don't know. And she asked in her broken Sinhalese how to get a bus to Gampaha.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Oh,
my worry is that she probably didn't survive
I
because
understand.
she couldn't speak Sinhala properly, and she I don't think she survived that day. And then what would have happened to the child?
That's right. These images, haunt you. Like, um, it was a time of such brutality. You know, I
Yes,
think only those of
yes,
us who were there, who were witness. I was 8 years old when the riots broke out, and
yes,
some images like from inside the refugee camp that my family and I were displaced to. You can't unsee it. You can't unhear it. These images live in your heart and your memories for so long.
yes. That's how it is actually. I mean, it's just one of the memories of so many that I have seen in that brutal war. But this is something I find very difficult to forget. Then after that, actually, I kept walking and I tried to catch a bus, but no buses would stop, and they were all so packed. And I decided to walk back to Sengivala from Bambalapitiya. And then when I was walking, walking past Bambalapiti Junction, there were a lot of shops, sari shops near the Bambalapiti Kovil and things like that. They were all blazed, just kind of huge fire, and nothing but fire, and you could feel the heat when you just walk past them. And so obviously, couple of 1 or 2 hours before I came there were those shops were burnt down, and then some police officers were stopping cars and asking to take people in their cars if they had have spares, any space. And so basically, I was put into a car driven by a woman. I can remember she was wearing a sari and she was Sinhalese, and she was disturbed by that. At the same time, she didn't seem to be upset about what is going on a lot. I mean, she didn't use the word "pow,"
Right.
and things like that. And so basically, it was not a seat; it was a kind of a wagon. So I was basically just kind of sitting on the floor of the wagon part of that car, and there were other people in the rear seat. And the car was stopped in Pamankara Bridge and by a gang of men. And when they were stopped, basically um, it's not kind of stopping in a very nice
Yeah.
way. They were basically throwing themselves to the front of the car, and this woman applied her brakes, and then they started screaming, we are Sinhalese," and then they said, "We want petrol from your
Oh,
car," and she said, "No, we don't have enough petrol. We barely have petrol to go home." And then because she said we are Sinhalese, and they said, "Okay, Ganu driver, a woman driver," so they kind of let her to go. Those days, women drivers were very rare.
that's right.
And then, yeah, then they stopped somewhere close to the Ivala, and I just walked back. And so, yeah, I went back to the lodge, the boarding place where I was, and then after that, everything stopped, and there were from time to time various news breaks from in the National Trupavahini. That was the only television station which was giving the news, and that was everything came through the government, so it's only the government versions you saw. Basically, what we were told is, tigers attack, and or sometimes, not tigers really, Demala Trasavadi, Tamil terrorists attack. Yeah, and we are basically, we are fighting back, and so forth. So I think I was under the impression my parents were okay, and my sister used to stay in the same. She used to go to school in Colombo from the same boarding place, but because she went home in the weekend, she didn't come to the school. My parents decided to keep her. She was 2 years younger than me.
Right.
She was in grade 6, and so she was not there. But but I thought everybody are okay. There is no way to find out what is happening with my parents, and because I have been always so optimistic and naive, and I thought nobody would come and do anything to my father, because my mother is Sinhalese. So we are a mixed family.
Yeah.
Yes. And although my father was the only Tamil who lived in that village in Halkota, but my boarding, so I was allowed to stay in the lodge, and I overheard the person who is running, the owner of the house, the landlady, is telling somebody, "Oh, we have this kid in the home. If something happened to his parents," and then she said the rest in a whisper, so I couldn't hear. So she was saying something. Well, if something happened to her parents, we're going to hand him over to somewhere. I don't know what she was saying. So then only I realized, okay, something is not right here. Anyway, then my Sinhalese friend of my father came looking for me a couple of days later. He took me to my parents, and by the time my parents have and my two sisters have spent in a refugee camp for a couple of days, and then my father's friends have taken him and kept him in a house. In a house, it was not kind of they were hiding, they were openly keeping him, and also they were ready to face any attacks from local villagers.
Right.
So that's how that whole probably 3-4 weeks spent. Yeah.
So did you also end up in the refugee camp with your family?
No, not fortunately, because I was in the boarding house, and my parents decided to leave me there.
Okay.
And they had to immediately evacuate themselves to a refugee camp, and they stayed there maybe 2 days or something.
Right.
And after that, my father's friends decided to take him away with the whole family into a place in safe house in another village in Kalutara.
Right.
But that's so we were not hiding necessarily. But there was a gang of men who were protecting my father. They all my father's drinking buddies.
Right.
And so I think they just all came to help him. So yes, I can remember their names, and we used to call them uncles, and there were 6 of them. They didn't go home. They stayed with my father, and I can remember, they were drinking morning to night because they were so bored and there is nothing to do. And they were drinking arak, and when they ran out of arak, they started, going to consuming local alcohols and so forth.
Right.
Yes.
So it was, I mean, looking back, it was really an emotional ride. And all I can say is thank you so much, Visa, for sharing your story with us. And
look, I mean, I would like to add something as well. We thought it should be the end, but it was not the end. And after that, I saw the same thing repeated in different forms again and again. I saw 89, and I saw dead bodies, floating in rivers, and I saw dead bodies piled up in junctions, and being burned in makeshift fires. And I can't forget the ghastly smell of burning tires with dead bodies. And
can't.
then you think it is over.
That's right. I mean, we can only
But
hope that people learn from this, by listening to
yes,
stories like this.
yes,
Um,
yes. But unfortunately, no, it was not over. Still, then after becoming a lawyer, I mean, I just ended up working for a human rights center. And, at a time when we go and interview prisoners in remand detainees in Kalutara remand or Colombo magazine remand, all were just Tamil prisoners who were arrested under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Almost all of them were tortured. I mean,
uh,
bodies were full of torture marks. And so this has already
it's
repeated,
such a
and
tragedy, Visa, such a tragedy.
it
And
is, it
what do we
is,
do to each other? It's unbelievable, isn't it? Um, but
it
again, like I
is, it
said,
is.
thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to us. Um, and we can only hope that Sri Lanka heals from this.
Yes, and thank you for recording those stories and making available for for people to share and